Warning, the following video contains real criticism of real football boots. Viewers may be offended by opinions expressed in the following video. If you're easily offended, just leave your mean comment and go away. Thank you. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com bringing you a video today to rank every single current top-end Adidas boot from best to worst. Now, Adidas currently has quite a few top-end models, and I'll be ranking every single one of them. It's a total of 8 at the moment, which will include the X18 Plus, the X18.1, the Nemeziz 18 Plus, the Nemeziz 18.1, the Nemeziz Messi 18.1, the Predator 18 Plus, the Predator 18.1, and finally the Copa 18.1. These are all the current top-end models that are general releases. Any limited edition variants or takedown models are not going to be included in this video, mainly because I can't compare absolutely everything. You may have also noticed that I left out the iconic Adidas Copa Mundial, and that's not because they're bad. In fact, I would actually go as far as to say that I would be happy to wear the Copa Mundial over any of the modern Adidas lineup right now. However, it doesn't really compare to everything else that they're doing, and it's kind of its own standalone thing. If you like classic boots with a quality kangaroo leather upper, the Copa Mundial is truly one of the best, but it will not be included in this particular ranking. It's also worth noting that while I'll be ranking these boots from worst to best, worst doesn't necessarily mean bad, because ultimately these are all top-end models with something very high quality on offer. But of course, everyone likes something a little bit different. These rankings are based on what I like, my own personal preferences and experiences with each and every one of these boots. If you have a difference of opinion, that is perfectly fine, and feel free to share your own rankings down below in the comments of this video. If you guys do end up enjoying this video and perhaps want to see me ranking boots from best to worst turn into a series on the channel, don't forget to support this one with a like and leave your suggestions for what boots you'd like to see ranked down below in the comments. Also, if you're not subscribed already and don't want to miss out on a new video every single day, be sure to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification, because like I just said, I upload new videos every day. Starting from the bottom at spot number 8, my least favorite top-end Adidas boot has to be the Adidas X18 Plus. For those that regularly watch the channel, you know that I'm not a huge fan of laceless boots, mainly because you have a lack of adjustability, there's a lack of lockdown, and they really have to fit you perfectly in order to get a positive experience out of them. And I really find that the X18 Plus, while they seem to fit well just based on trying them on, once I start running around, once I start doing more intense movements, sprints, cuts, changes of direction, I just find that the boots feel very plasticky and my foot's not nearly as secure as I would like it to be. Moving on to spot number 7, we have what I personally think is the best looking boot from the Adidas brand right now, but one unfortunately that I just don't particularly care for that much, and that is the Adidas Predator 18 Plus. Another laceless boot from the Adidas brand that does fit me a lot better than the X18 Plus does. What I don't care for is the fact that there is still a lack of lockdown. The laceless system is essentially just elasticated prime knit, exactly as you get from the Predator 18.1, some modifications to the side area of the upper, but ultimately the lockdown is nowhere near as good as what you get from the 18.1. It has the incorporation of boost at the base of the forefoot as well as the insole, not something that's really noticeable in my opinion, and I don't particularly care for this particular sole plate or stud pattern. I just find that the upper doesn't necessarily match the sole plate. The upper is soft and very sock-like. The sole plate is kind of on the stiffer side, which I think makes sense given that this is a Predator, something that is pretty iconic for the Adidas brand. But a major complaint that a lot of people have had about this boot is that it really doesn't relate back to older Predators in almost any way at all. Which brings us to spot number 6, still the bottom half of the list, the Adidas Nemeziz 18 Plus, the final laceless boot in the Adidas lineup that I would say is my personal favorite of the bunch, based on how they fit me and based on the amount of lockdown that these provide, because they fit me pretty well and partially because of the actual lockdown system that they've incorporated. Instead of just being laceless by way of these elasticated agility bandages, there is actually a mesh liner on the inside that does prevent a lot of stretching across the top of the foot that I suppose makes the lockdown the best of the bunch as far as Adidas laceless models go. Still, the lockdown is a bit of an issue, certainly not as good as what you'll get from any of the laced variations of the Nemeziz 18 lineup right now, and I don't particularly care for the way that it looks. This collar I just think is goofy. It does look better on feet. The sole plate and stud pattern is okay, but definitely not my favorite either, and the boot is a lot bulkier bulkier than I think a lot of people realize. There's not too much hype around the Nemeziz line, this being the second generation since they were first unveiled. Not a ton of changes, but a definite improvement over the original laceless Nemeziz, the 17 Plus, but still would not be one of my go-to picks for a top-end Adidas boot. Now, I do realize that I have just ranked the 3 laceless models from Adidas as the bottom 3, but when you consider what the Adidas lineup currently is, a laceless variation and then a laced variation of essentially the exact same boot, there isn't a lot of reason to spend the extra money on the laceless variation when the laced versions are cheaper and offer the adjustability and extra lockdown that you don't get with the laceless models. I know the laceless thing at the moment is considered very cool, but when you're talking about objective performance, the quality of the fit, the quality of the lockdown, and the quality of the overall experience, I definitely think going for the 0.1 laced models over the plus laceless models is definitely the way to go, and certainly my personal preference. Which brings us to the middle of the list, specifically spot number 5, which goes to the Adidas Predator 18.1, essentially a laced variation of what you get from the $75 more expensive Predator 18 Plus. They add a lacing system. Technically, the midfoot of the upper is a little bit different, and they do take away the boost, but the boost, in my opinion, is more of a gimmicky thing rather than something that makes for any kind of true difference in regards to comfort or underfoot cushioning. But the addition of that lacing system makes the world of difference in regards to how these fit, the lockdown, the adjustability, the responsiveness. It's a much more positive experience overall in the 18.1 versus the 18 Plus, in my opinion. When you're talking about straight lockdown, I don't care what your preferences are, laceless or laced, this has better lockdown than the 18 Plus. There's no question about that. The reason why it's only number 5 on this list for me personally is, again, I'm just not a huge fan of this particular formula. Yes, the upper is very good. It has that sock-like feel, but there's really nothing too special about it, and I don't particularly care for the way that they feel on my feet. I find them to be a little bit too narrow in the forefoot toe box area, not to the point where they're uncomfortable, but it's just not my thing. And again, this sole plate and stud pattern, while it's not bad, I just think it's a little bit too stiff and clunky for the upper that's relatively thin and fairly streamlined. If they could partner this upper with something like the speed frame or sprint frame variations that we get on the X line, I think this boot would be a lot better off. But as it is, this is only my 5th favorite boot within the Adidas lineup right now. At spot number 4, we have the Nemeziz 18.1, the top-end laced variation within the Nemeziz lineup that when compared to the laceless 18 Plus, it loses the collar and adds a lacing system. Other than that, there is basically no difference here. Not to mention, these are a lot less expensive as well, with a $225 retail price versus the $280 to $290 retail that you'll pay for the laceless variation. For me, the overall experience is going to be very similar, being that they have pretty much the exact same upper, but having that lacing system, having that ability to adjust the midfoot and forefoot of the boot in regards to the tightness, having your heel truly locked in place, I just think makes for a much more positive experience in general, and I just feel a lot more comfortable in the boots overall. Again, I still think that this particular generation of Nemeziz, when compared to the original, is a little bit too bulky, especially in the forefoot toe box area. It's not that this material feels bad, it's just not what I really like. If I wanted something that padded, I would probably go for something that was leather rather than synthetic. But if you liked what the original Nemeziz had on offer, this is basically a more responsive variation of that. I'm still not crazy about the extended back, which is still an issue on the 18 Plus with its extended collar, a little bit of chafing at the back of the Achilles tendon, and technically this is also an FG-AG stud pattern, but not really that well suited for use on artificial grass based on my experience. At spot number 3, I've picked the Adidas Messi Nemeziz 18.1, which is the top end boot in the Messi signature lineup, which is basically just a variation of what I had at spot number 4, the Nemeziz 18.1. Essentially the upper, aside from the visual elements, the way the color blocking is exactly the same. The only difference you're gonna find here is that it does use the Messi specific sprint frame and stud pattern, which honestly, I think this is more flexible. I prefer the way that it feels from a comfort standpoint, and this particular stud pattern, also FG-AG, is much better for use on artificial grass, and honestly, I just think feels better on natural grass as well. It's a better base to this particular upper. The upper as a whole, I still think is a little bit too bulky, all things considered. Obviously, Messi himself wears a custom variation of this particular boot that does have a burrito style tongue. Hard to say whether or not the upper is exactly the same. I would venture to guess that it probably isn't exactly the same. And the back is still a little bit too high for my liking. It can cause a little bit of discomfort during the break-in period. But as a whole, I actually really like the Messi variation of the Nemeziz this time around. And honestly, if this was my option to wear as a boot for the entire season, I would not be unhappy about it. Which brings us to the 2 spot, my second favorite Adidas boot that I would also consider to be their most underrated top-end model. And because it is underrated, because it isn't very popular, it hasn't sold very well, therefore you can actually get it on sale in pretty much any older colorway for 50% off or more, the Adidas Copa 18.1. For those that were big fans of the leather F50 Adizeros back when those were very popular, this is basically a variation of that I would argue is better quality. Instead of the calfskin leather that we used to get, that they cleverly named Taurus leather, trying to make us think that it was something more special, this features kangaroo leather, and you get it throughout the entire upper, the entire midfoot, the forefoot and toe box area is a really nice kangaroo leather material. It now has an internal support cage instead of stitching, which actually makes for a much more responsive feel than you might expect. The upper doesn't stretch quite as much as the leather did on some of those older F50 models. It has a one-piece construction, which I also think lends itself well to the modern feel that a lot of people like in boots in 2018. This is not an uncommon thing and it works well with this design. It does have this very stupid and unnecessary fold over flap tongue, I'm not gonna lie, and it's kind of difficult to keep it folded down. You can kind of fold it down and tie it on top. It always seems to make its way back up. Not in the way, I just think aesthetically it's kind of a goofy thing. It's obviously a standard low cut and it features the sprint frame sole plate and stud pattern taken directly from the first Copa 17.1 generation and the Ace 17 generation that honestly is just a very simple stud pattern, the same layout you'll find across the entire Adidas brand that just works really, really well, whether you're on firm natural grass or artificial grass. Plus, just like those older leather F50s, especially because of the sprint frame base, these are also very lightweight. I know they're not the best looking boots in the world, but from a performance standpoint, these are really, really good. And then finally, at the number 1 spot, my personal favorite boot from Adidas right now, and it was a pretty easy pick for me, the X18.1. And you might be saying to yourself, how can the X18 Plus be your least favorite, but the .1 be your most favorite? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, consider this. They technically do have different uppers, this featuring a speed mesh upper versus skeletal weave on the laceless variation. And I've said in previous videos that the 2 uppers do end up feeling pretty similar, although this, because of the mesh base, does end up feeling softer once you've actually broken them in. It has less of a plasticky sensation than what you get from the 18 Plus. Also, it's worth noting that while this does still feature a one-piece upper, the central portion where the laces are positioned is a soft, thin mesh material, which makes the shoes feel a lot less plasticky. Partner that with an actual lacing system, so once these are on your feet, you have the ability to tighten them and make your foot feel super secure and locked in place, which I think is very important for a speed boot, which is basically what this is. You want the most responsive feel, you want them to feel very connected to your feet. This, in my opinion, just offers a way better experience when compared to the 18 Plus, and that's going to be the case for just about everybody who gives these a go. You don't have that variation in fit because of the lacing system. Adjustability is super important when you're talking about the performance and comfort of a boot. These are also very comfortable for speed boots. The upper is soft, and again, I don't want to relate everything back to older F50 models, but this is the first boot from Adidas that I think comes very, very close to that 2014 F50 Adizero that many would argue was the best F50 model Adidas ever made, which is partially why I really like these. Then of course it does have the sprint frame variation that they have cleverly renamed Speed Frame with the external heel counter and basically the same layout that we're used to seeing, that for whatever reason just feels particularly aggressive as far as traction is concerned on natural grass and works quite well on artificial grass as well. It's light, it feels good, it's comfortable, it performs the part, the touch is really nice. It's one of those boots that I am really, really happy to wear every time that I get to wear them, and by far my personal favorite from the Adidas brand right now. Anyways, guys, those are my rankings from worst to best of every current top-end Adidas boot. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have any rankings of your own? Feel free to leave all of that down below in the comments of this video. Also, for those that will ask, I've already ranked every single current top-end Nike boot. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen. Go ahead and watch it if you're curious which Nike boots I really like and which ones I don't care for quite as much. Other than that, if you guys did enjoy the video, don't forget to support it with a like. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you are interested in any of these boots for yourself, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the new releases page on my website, where you'll find all the latest colorways, the older ones as well, for the best possible prices, always with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, so you never have to pay the full retail price. If you're not subscribed already, be sure to hit that subscribe button for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.